The foreclosure notice lay crumpled on my parents' kitchen table, its red letters stark against the white paper. Mom paced the worn linoleum floor while Dad sat with his head in his hands, the weight of their financial troubles evident in the slope of his shoulders. $20,000, Mom repeated, her voice cracking. Where are we supposed to find that kind of money in 2 weeks? I took a deep breath, smoothing out the notice. I can help. They both turned to look at me, surprise and something else. Was it shame? Crossing their faces. At 32, I'd built a successful software consulting business, though they'd never shown much interest in understanding exactly what I did. Emma, Dad started. We can't ask you to. You're not asking. I interrupted. I'm offering. The kitchen was silent except for the steady drip of the leaking faucet, a repair that, like so many others, had been postponed due to lack of funds. The house I'd grown up in was showing its age. Peeling wallpaper, creaking floors, a roof that desperately needed replacing. What about your brother? Mom asked. Andrew should help too. He's the successful one. The familiar sting of comparison hit me. Andrew, the golden child who worked on Wall Street and drove expensive cars, but somehow never had money to help the family. Andrew, who could do no wrong even when he did nothing at all. Andrew's not here, I said quietly. I am. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and showed them the transfer I'd already prepared. $20,000, ready to move with a single tap. Mom's eyes widened. How do you have that kind of money? I told you my business was doing well. Though they'd never asked for details, never shown interest in my growing success, I can transfer it right now. Dad straightened in his chair. We'll pay you back, of course. No need, I said, tapping the transfer button. Consider it a gift. The notification chimed, confirming the transaction. $20,000, more than they'd ever believed I could earn, let alone save. Moving from my account to theirs. I don't know what to say, Mom whispered, tears in her eyes. Just promise me something, I said, standing up. Promise you'll stop comparing me to Andrew. Stop acting like I'm somehow less successful just because I chose a different path. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a mistake. Mom's face hardened, the gratitude vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. How dare you? She snapped. After everything we've done for you, you use this to try to make us feel guilty. That's not what your brother would never throw his success in our faces like this. I stared at her, disbelief mixing with a lifetime of hurt. I just gave you $20,000 to save your house. And now, you're using it against us. Mom's voice rose, just like you've always been jealous of your brother's success. Margaret, Dad said weakly, but she was too far gone. Get out, she screamed, pointing at the door. Get out and never come back. We don't need your money or your judgment. I stood frozen, the reality of what was happening slowly sinking in. I'd just given them enough money to save their home, and instead of gratitude, I was getting thrown out. Mom, please. Out. She grabbed my arm, pushing me toward the door. And take your money with you. We'll find another way. The transfer's already done, I said quietly, letting her push me onto the front porch. The mortgage is due in 2 weeks. Don't let your pride cost you your home. The door slammed behind me with enough force to rattle the windows. I stood there for a moment, listening to Mom's muffled sobs and Dad's attempts to calm her down. My phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. Heard Mom and Dad are having money troubles. You should help them out since you live closer. I laughed bitterly, walking to my car. Of course he'd heard. He always heard about problems, but never actually helped solve them. Another text came through as I started the engine. BTW, can you spot me 5? Investment opportunity came up. I turned off my phone without responding and pulled away from the house I'd grown up in, the house I'd just saved, the house I'd apparently never be welcome in again. But what my parents didn't know, what no one in the family knew, was that their mortgage wasn't the only financial situation I was intimately familiar with. I'd been watching, learning, gathering information about the house, about Dad's failed business ventures, about Andrew's investment opportunities that always seemed to need family funding. And I'd been planning. Because sometimes being the forgotten child, the one no one pays attention to, means you see everything. And sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. I drove home to my quiet apartment, opened my laptop, and began typing an email to my lawyer. Phase 1 was complete, though not quite as I'd planned. Now it was time for Phase 2, and this time, I wouldn't be the one begging to come back. 2 weeks passed. My phone remained silent. No calls from Mom, no texts from Dad, not even an acknowledgement that my money had saved their home. The only family member who kept in touch was Andrew, sending increasingly desperate requests for loans. I sat in my home office, surrounded by monitors displaying financial data, when Diana from my bank called. Ms. Walker, there's been another attempt to access your accounts. Your brother again. I smiled grimly. Let me guess. He tried to use Mom's maiden name as verification. And your childhood pet's name. Should I flag his attempts as fraudulent? Not yet. I leaned back in my chair. Let's see how far he's willing to go. After hanging up, I pulled up the document I'd been working on. A detailed spreadsheet tracking every loan Andrew had taken from family members over the past 5 years. The total was staggering. Over $300,000 borrowed and never repaid. My intercom buzzed. Your 2 p.m. is here, my assistant announced. Right on time, James Parker from the SEC walked into my office. He'd been surprisingly interested when I'd reached out about investigating certain investment schemes. Ms. Walker, he said, setting his briefcase on my desk. I've reviewed the documentation you sent. It's comprehensive. I nodded. 10 years of watching my brother scam family members tends to produce a lot of evidence. This goes beyond family, James replied, opening his briefcase. Your brother's been running an unauthorized investment operation, taking money from multiple sources, promising impossible returns. A Ponzi scheme, I finished. I know. I've been tracking it for years. He looked up sharply. Years. Why wait until now to come forward? I turned my monitor so he could see the latest email from Andrew. Emma, seriously need 50 by tomorrow. Huge opportunity. We'll pay back double in a month. Don't tell Mom and Dad. Because sometimes you have to wait for people to reveal who they really are. James studied the email. Your parents, they're victims in this too. They're his biggest enablers, I corrected. They've remortgaged their house 3 times to give him money. The $20,000 I paid 2 weeks ago, that was to save them from foreclosure after his last sure-thing investment failed. And they don't know you're the one who reported him. They don't know anything about me, I said quietly. They never have. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Monthly mortgage payment due next week. Assuming you're handling it, since you offered to help. I showed it to James. See? They threw me out 2 weeks ago, told me never to come back. Now they just expect me to keep paying. He shook his head. We'll need statements from other victims. Family members who lost money. Already compiled. I handed him a thick folder. Statements, bank records, text messages. Aunt Sarah lost her retirement fund. Uncle Pete had to sell his business. Cousin Michael's kids can't go to college. And they're all willing to testify. They will be. Once they understand what really happened to their money. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. Andrew needs help with an investment. If you can't support your brother, at least send the mortgage payment. James raised an eyebrow at the message. Perfect timing, I said. Ready to move forward? He nodded, pulling out official-looking documents. We can execute the warrants tomorrow morning. No, I replied, checking my calendar. Next week, Tuesday. Why the delay? Because Monday is the monthly family dinner. The one where Andrew always announces his latest investment opportunity and collects more money. I smiled slightly. I want him to have one last chance to show exactly who he is. After James left, I sat staring at my parents' texts. They hadn't bothered to ask how I was doing after throwing me out. Hadn't acknowledged the money I'd given them. Just demanded more, always more, to feed Andrew's endless schemes. My laptop pinged with an alert. Andrew had just booked a first-class flight to the Cayman Islands for next Wednesday. Right on schedule. I picked up my phone and typed a response to Mom. I'll be at dinner on Monday. Her reply came instantly. Good. Bring your checkbook. Your brother has an amazing opportunity to share. I forwarded the exchange to James, adding surveillance team confirmed for Monday. All set, he replied. Recording devices will catch everything. I started typing an email to all the family members Andrew had scammed, scheduling it to send Tuesday morning. I know what happened to your money. Come to my office at 2 p.m. if you want the full truth. A final text came through from Andrew. Hey sis, got something big to discuss Monday. Bring that business brain of yours. And maybe a blank check? Looking forward to it, I replied. Because I really was. I'd spent years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one they only noticed when they needed money. Years watching Andrew drain our family's resources while being praised as the successful son. Well, success comes in many forms, and sometimes it looks like finally exposing the truth. I opened my safe and removed the final piece of evidence. A recorded conversation from 5 years ago where Andrew admitted he was running a Ponzi scheme. I'd kept it all this time, waiting for the right moment. That moment was coming. Monday's family dinner would be one to remember, and Tuesday would change everything. I just hoped my parents would finally see the truth about their golden child before they lost everything trying to protect him. But even if they didn't, even if they never forgave me for what I was about to do, I knew it was the right thing. Because sometimes love means stopping people from destroying themselves, even if they hate you for it. Monday evening arrived with a sense of inevitability. I parked outside my parents' house, noting the new luxury car in the driveway, Andrew's latest purchase with other people's money. The SEC surveillance van was discreetly positioned down the street, disguised as a utility vehicle. I checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. In less than 24 hours, everything would change. Mom opened the door before I could knock. Emma, finally. She hugged me as if she hadn't thrown me out 2 weeks ago. Andrew's got such exciting news. The house smelled of pot roast. Mom's specialty, always served when Andrew had a new investment opportunity to discuss. The familiar scent now carried a bitter edge. Dad sat in his usual chair, looking tired but hopeful. Andrew held court in the living room, dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than our parents' monthly mortgage. "Little sister," he grinned, showing too many teeth. "Glad you could make it. Brought your checkbook." "Always prepared," I replied, patting my bag. Inside was indeed a checkbook, along with a hidden recording device sensed to the SEC team. "That's my girl," Dad said proudly, as if he hadn't sat silently while Mom kicked me out. Always the responsible one. Dinner was a performance of normalcy. Mom served her pot roast, making sure Andrew got the biggest portion. Dad asked about everyone's week, though he only really listened to Andrew's answers. I pushed food around my plate, watching the scene unfold like a play I'd seen too many times. Finally, Andrew cleared his throat. "So, family, I've got something amazing to share. Here we go. I've discovered an investment opportunity that's going to change everything," he continued, eyes bright with rehearsed enthusiasm. "Guaranteed returns of 40% in 3 months." "That's wonderful, honey," Mom beamed. "Sounds impressive," I said carefully. "How does it work?" Andrew launched into his pitch, the same one he'd used countless times, just with different numbers. Exclusive access, limited time offer, too complex to explain fully, but too good to pass up. "I just need some capital to secure our position," he finished. "Say, 50,000? I know it's a lot, but the returns." "We can remortgage again," Dad offered immediately. "Actually," I interrupted, "I have some questions first." Andrew's smile flickered. "Come on, sis. You know I wouldn't steer our family wrong. Like you didn't steer Aunt Sarah wrong, or Uncle Pete, or Cousin Michael." The room went silent. "What are you talking about?" Mom demanded. I pulled out my folder. "I'm talking about the $300,000 Andrew has borrowed from family members over the past 5 years. Money that was never repaid. Money that was lost in guaranteed investments." "That's different," Andrew protested. "Those deals just needed more time. Like this deal." I slid a printout across the table. "The one where you've already booked a flight to the Cayman Islands for Wednesday." His face went pale. "Emma?" Mom snapped. "How dare you accuse your brother? It's not an accusation." I stood up, addressing the hidden microphones as much as my family. "It's evidence. Evidence of a Ponzi scheme that's been draining this family dry for years." "What evidence?" Dad asked, his voice barely a whisper. I played the recording from 5 years ago, Andrew's voice clear and damning. "Of course, it's a Ponzi scheme. These people are too stupid to realize. Take their money, show them fake returns, use new investments to pay old investors. It's beautiful." Mom's hands flew to her mouth. Dad seemed to age 10 years in 10 seconds. "You recorded me?" Andrew snarled, lunging for my phone. The front door burst open. James Parker led a team of SEC agents into the room, badges displayed. "Andrew Walker," James announced, "you're under arrest for operating a fraudulent investment scheme, wire fraud, and multiple counts of financial elder abuse." "No," Mom screamed, trying to block the agents. "There must be some mistake. The only mistake," I said quietly, "was enabling him for so long, watching him destroy this family while pretending everything was fine." As the agents led Andrew away in handcuffs, Dad turned to me with tears in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell us sooner? Would you have believed me? Over him?" I gestured at the house around us. "Every mortgage, every loan, every time you gave him money. I tried to warn you, But you never listened. We listened. Mom protested weakly. No, you ordered. Asked. Demanded. But you never listened. I picked up my bag. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I'm meeting with everyone, Andrew schemed. You're welcome to join us. Learn exactly what your golden child has done. Emma, please. Dad reached for my hand. We need you. No, I said softly. You needed me 2 weeks ago when I gave you $20,000. You needed me every time I tried to warn you about Andrew. Now you need to face the truth. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I'll keep paying the mortgage. Not for you, but because this house shouldn't pay for Andrew's crimes. But don't expect anything else until you understand what real success looks like. The next day, my office filled with shell-shocked family members learning the full scope of Andrew's schemes. Aunt Sarah wept over her lost retirement. Uncle Pete raged about his sold business. Cousin Michael mourned his children's college funds. My parents sat in the back, silent for the first time I could remember. When the meeting ended, Mom approached my desk. We were wrong, she said simply. About what? Everything. She placed a set of keys on my desk. My old house keys. The ones I'd given back 2 weeks ago. Come home. I picked up the keys, then held them out to her. I am home. In the life I built while you were busy praising Andrew's lies. We can change, Dad said from behind her. Then prove it. I handed them a folder. Inside is a repayment plan for everyone Andrew schemed. Start there. Show me you understand the difference between flash and substance. They left with the folder, shoulders bent under the weight of truth. 3 months later, they'd stuck to the repayment plan, started attending financial responsibility classes, and finally started seeing me, really seeing me. Andrew pled guilty, facing years in prison. The family members he'd scammed would eventually recover some of their money through asset seizure and my parents' repayment plan. And me? I kept my promise, paid the mortgage, maintained the house, proved that success isn't about big promises and flashy schemes. Sometimes it's about quiet strength, about doing what's right even when it hurts. Sometimes it's about being the child they didn't want until they needed exactly who you were all along. Mom and Dad visit my office now, actually asking about my business, finally understanding that real success isn't measured in fast returns and empty promises. And that house they almost lost, they've put it up for sale, downsizing to something they can afford without depending on anyone else. They're learning, growing, changing, and so am I. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong. It's in finally proving yourself right, even if it takes losing everything to find it. The foreclosure notice lay crumpled on my parents' kitchen table, its red letters stark against the white paper. Mom paced the worn linoleum floor while Dad sat with his head in his hands, the weight of their financial troubles evident in the slope of his shoulders. $20,000, Mom repeated, her voice cracking. Where are we supposed to find that kind of money in 2 weeks? I took a deep breath, smoothing out the notice. I can help. They both turned to look at me, surprise and something else. Was it shame? Crossing their faces. At 32, I'd built a successful software consulting business, though they'd never shown much interest in understanding exactly what I did. Emma, Dad started. We can't ask you to. You're not asking. I interrupted. I'm offering. The kitchen was silent except for the steady drip of the leaking faucet, a repair that, like so many others, had been postponed due to lack of funds. The house I'd grown up in was showing its age. Peeling wallpaper, creaking floors, a roof that desperately needed replacing. "What about your brother?" Mom asked. "Andrew should help too. He's the successful one."
I'm a 35-year-old office worker. My husband, Kevin, is 6 years older than me, and we've been married for 9 years. Right now, I'm living with my mom for some reasons. Let me explain how this happened. 4 years ago, Kevin and I built a house. At that time, Kevin had just changed jobs, and we didn't have much money saved or a high income. Kevin used to work for a big company, but his boss constantly bullied him secretly. This caused Kevin to have trouble sleeping, and eventually he couldn't go to work anymore. He saw a psychiatrist and took a 3-month break, but when he didn't get better, he quit his job. After that, we lived on just my salary. Kevin didn't work for 3 months, but slowly started to feel better. He began eating and sleeping well again, and his psychiatrist was happy with his quick recovery. My cheerful, loving Kevin was back. He then started looking for a new job. His experience at the big company helped, but finding a job was hard because he left his last job due to mental health issues. During this time, we found a small company that needed Kevin. The salary was about 3/4 of what he used to make, but he was happy to be working again. He said it was much better than being without a job, which made me happy. This job was also in a field he wanted to work in. We wanted to have children, but it was clear that life would be tough if I stopped working. So I continued working. I also loved my job, and we decided not to have children at that time. Our life was peaceful until my mother, Sarah, was paralyzed in a car accident and needed a wheelchair to get around. My dad had passed away when I was in middle school, and Sarah had been living alone since then. Our family home was old and not suitable for a wheelchair, with many steps. Kevin then said, "I'm worried. Let's live together." Sarah and I were surprised, but I appreciated Kevin's unexpected kindness. Since Kevin had just changed jobs, we were unsure about the future, but we decided to apply for a mortgage. As we expected, it was tough to get a loan because Kevin hadn't been at his job for long. However, we were determined and didn't give up. After trying with several mortgage companies, we finally found one that worked with us and approved our loan. We bought our dream home, which I had always imagined, filled with the smell of wood, thick wooden beams on the ceiling, custom storage spaces, a kitchen tailored for my height, and spacious cypress flooring. Importantly, it was a single-story, barrier-free house, perfect for living comfortably in a wheelchair. We were excited as our house was being built and visited the construction site every day. When our carefully designed home was finished, it had a large yard where my mom, who now rarely went outside, could enjoy sunbathing. However, there was a catch with the land. It was given to us by Kevin's grandfather, who adored Kevin. Kevin's family wasn't wealthy, but when his grandfather was diagnosed with cancer, he started to distribute his assets, giving us the largest plot of land. It felt like winning the lottery, but the land was just a 10-minute walk from Kevin's family home. When we told them my mother would be moving in with us, Kevin's sister laughed and said, "Why is your mother moving in too? How shameless is your family?" Kevin's mother told me that marrying someone different like me would bring trouble. She also harshly said it was terrible for her son to have to care for an old person and called me a curse. Even then, Kevin stood up for my mother and me. He said the land was a gift from his grandfather, and no one should complain. Kevin's mother and sister are really mean. It's amazing that Kevin, who is so kind, comes from that family. He's like a beautiful flower that grew out of mud. Kevin always says his family shows him how not to be. Kevin thinks his grandfather gave us the land because he wanted us to take care of his mother in her old age. He also gave other properties away. Kevin's sister got a parking lot that's a 10-minute walk from their home. It's smaller than our land but makes good money from parking fees. Honestly, I would have preferred that, but a gift is still a gift, and we are thankful. Thanks to my grandfather-in-law, we could build our house without paying for the land and used it to help get a loan. When the house was finished, we invited Kevin's mother and his sister's family over. The builders told us they had visited the house several times without asking us. They showed up late without apologizing and said, "This is kind of like Grandpa's house, so it's like our house too." Kevin's sister came in with muddy shoes and said the house smelled nice and didn't need air fresheners. She and her husband walked around with muddy shoes, ignoring the slippers we offered. When I suggested they use slippers, she laughed and said it was too much trouble and that we could just clean the floor. The visit was uncomfortable from the start, and they didn't bring anything with them. When they saw my mother's room, which is spacious and sunny, Kevin's mother said she would like that room. My mother's room is like a duplex with its own kitchen, almost a second living space. I want to live here, said my mother-in-law. She then told my mother, you were lucky to have that accident, weren't you? Thanks to being paralyzed, you moved from that old shack to this nice house. Isn't that a lucky turn of events? My mother said nothing but looked very sad. I was really angry inside, but before I could say anything, Kevin spoke up. What did you just say? There are things you should and shouldn't say. It makes me question your humanity. I can't even believe you're part of my family. You're the worst. Apologize now, Kevin demanded firmly. Whether they were amused or not, my mother and sister-in-law glared at me. Then my sister-in-law angrily asked Kevin, what's this all about? It's a total turnoff. It's not cool to invite people over and then be rude to them. Just because you built a house, you think you can act superior. The mother-in-law chimed in. My son messed up by marrying you. You're a jinx. Kevin didn't stay silent. Enough is enough. This mess started because of your rude comments. You said the accident was a good thing and called my wife a jinx. I will not forgive that. The mother and sister-in-law looked frustrated by Kevin's strong response. Then my mother, who had been watching everything, said with regret, it's okay. I am here because of the accident, and it's true I moved from a rundown house to this beautiful one. Your son has always been kind to me. Thank you. Perhaps feeling guilty, the mother and sister-in-law left, giving me a nasty look. My mother then apologized to Kevin. I'm sorry if I upset your mother and sister. I'm sorry for ruining the mood at our housewarming party. Kevin responded, no, I should be the one apologizing. It's embarrassing how they lack decency. I'm really sorry, but I am happy to be living with you. Please understand that. With that, my mother started to tear up. Since we live near Kevin's parents' house, the neighbors all know us well. They've known Kevin since he was a child and are very kind to us. 4 months have passed since that day. We were finally settling into our new home, and my mother started to smile more when I received an unexpected call from home while I was at work. We rarely get calls from home, so it surprised me. My bad feeling was right. My mom, sounding very upset, called to tell me something awful. Kevin had collapsed at work. I was shocked and spoke to my boss right away, then rushed to the hospital. On the way, I tried to stay calm by imagining that Kevin would be okay when I got there, joking around like always. But when I arrived, it was a shock to see him with so many tubes attached to him. We had planned to go to a movie that weekend. The doctor told me Kevin was in critical condition and might not wake up. I felt like I was in a movie. I couldn't even cry. Despite my prayers, Kevin passed away at the hospital. My shock continued as my mother and sister-in-law arrived when they heard Kevin had died. My sister-in-law accused me harshly, asking if I had poisoned him or if I was after his life insurance. My mother-in-law also blamed me, saying bad things always happen around me and calling me a jinx. I was too sad to respond. Then my own mother arrived in a care driver's taxi, crying over Kevin's death, which finally made me cry too. We both sobbed loudly. My mother-in-law rudely told us to stop the fake crying. She said Kevin had changed because of me and that she didn't want to see us ever again. Then she left the hospital. A funeral director came to organize Kevin's funeral, and we went to the funeral home. Kevin had died from a brain hemorrhage, which was hard to believe since he was fine that morning. When I told my mother-in-law the funeral plans, she coldly said she wouldn't come because Kevin always sided with my mother and me. She said her daughter wouldn't come either. Many of Kevin's co-workers and friends came to the viewing, but neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law and her husband were there. Many attended the funeral, and it was clear that Kevin was deeply loved. Many people cried for him. It was hard, but maybe this is just the kind of people his family were. I was happy to spend the whole day with those who truly missed my husband. After Kevin's death, I got an email from my mother-in-law, but it was inappropriate, so I didn't reply. She was asking about the life insurance money and kept emailing because I didn't respond. Eventually, she claimed she had a right to it. I chose to ignore it because I wasn't ready to deal with that. When we got home, I noticed a light on inside, which was odd. My mother, Sarah, was confused and thought we had turned off all the lights. I figured maybe I forgot because I was so upset. I told her it was understandable given the situation, and I unlocked the door. When we entered, we could hear the TV, which was very strange. Inside, we found my sister-in-law and her husband sitting there. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. The living room was full of unfamiliar furniture and boxes. We had no idea what was happening. My sister-in-law said, "Why did you just barge in here?" "Well, it's your first time, so I'll let it slide. We're taking this house. We sold your stuff, so leave." My mother and I were completely shocked. I asked where our furniture and belongings had gone, and she casually said a resale company came and took everything, claiming we had good furniture and they got a good price for it. They bought new furniture with that money, saying, "Who wants furniture that a dead person used? It's bad luck." She added that she cared about such things and our stuff was packed in boxes. She even remarked that we must be minimalists or just poor because we had so few things. The furniture was carefully chosen by my husband and me. I couldn't forgive them for this. My mom was furious too, her face turning beet red, but she was too shocked to respond. I immediately called the resale company. After explaining the situation, they agreed to treat the items as stolen and return them. Now that my husband is gone, dealing with this was the last thing I needed. I don't want anything to do with his family, but I do want to stay in a house that's full of memories of him. While I was wrestling with these feelings, my mother quietly said to me, "What do you think Kevin would say if he were here now?" "He might say we should leave. I'm sure he would." Kevin often mentioned it's good to spend time with people who understand you, but there are some people who will never understand no matter how much you try. It's a waste of time dealing with those people. He was actually talking about his own mother and sister. I realized that if we stayed, his family would keep interfering. Acting on impulse, I signed a lease for an accessible apartment. My mom was surprised by how quickly I made that decision. I asked the resale company to hold on to the furniture for a few days, and it was moved to our new apartment 3 days later. In exchange for moving out, I made my mother-in-law and sister-in-law promise to cut ties with us. So a new life began for just my mother and me in the apartment. It turns out Kevin had many life insurance policies, almost obsessively so. He used to joke always with a smile, "When I die, you guys will be rich." True to his word, he left enough money for my mother and me to be comfortable for the rest of our lives. Since he couldn't secure a mortgage when we bought the house, I, being employed at a major corporation, bought the house in my name. I made sure that even if something happened to Kevin first, I wasn't going to keep paying a mortgage for a house I wouldn't live in. According to our agreement, the house would be auctioned off if the mortgage wasn't paid for 4 months. Time flew by, and 4 months passed quickly. Then I started receiving a lot of calls from my sister-in-law, Emily, and my mother-in-law, Maria. My call history was filled with their names, and it was getting scary, like something out of a horror movie. They were incredibly persistent. So I finally answered the phone. They were furious because the house was being sold. Apparently, when they tried to return, they found out they couldn't get in because of a seizure notice. Emily and her husband had moved out of their apartment since Kevin passed away, and Emily had also quit her job. I suggested they move back into their parents' house since they were panicking about suddenly being homeless. Surprisingly, Maria had gotten so caught up in gambling that she couldn't keep up and had sold her own house. It turns out they had been living together for the past 5 months. I also heard that they sold their main source of income, a parking lot in front of the train station, a long time ago. Now, Maria and Emily's family are completely homeless. When Maria said, "I'm sorry for everything. Let's get along. Can you lend me some money, please?" I replied, "I think it's best if you stay away since I'm a jinx. We're strangers now that we severed ties." Maria was quiet after mumbling weakly. In my mind, I was thinking, who's the real bad luck charm here? Then, when I said I wouldn't lend them a single cent, Emily, who had been listening next to Maria, shouted, "You devil. Bring us the money right now." I replied, "I am a devil and bad luck, so I'm going to hang up now," and ended the call. In reality, I involved a lawyer for the past 5 months to push for the auction of the house. I thought it was an unusual case, but apparently, it's not that uncommon. The house was sold without any major issues, giving our family a moment of peace. We plan to find a new home with the money Kevin left us. Since it's just my mother and me, we don't need a big house. We'd rather prioritize security as 2 women living together. So I chose a condominium with minimal noise disturbance. I remember something my husband always said when we built our home. People can get energy from the sun, so let's create a place where your mother can enjoy her hobby of reading in the garden without feeling self-conscious. With those words, he had made a spacious courtyard for her. So I looked for a condo with a large balcony where she could enjoy her coffee and read. It's smaller than our previous home, but the room is spacious enough to house the furniture my husband probably chose. The piece of land that was gifted to us by Kevin's grandfather was expansive, and the house sold for more than expected. With that money, we're moving forward. I recently bought a luxurious condominium with exceptional security features, a choice I'm sure would have comforted my always cautious husband, Kevin. The peace of mind that comes from living in such a secure place is invaluable, especially after the tumultuous experiences with my in-laws. Life has taken a dramatic turn since Kevin passed away. Amidst my grief, I've been dealing with the fallout from his family's actions, which frankly has been draining. Following the auction of the house, Kevin's mother, Maria, and his sister found themselves without a place to live. Despite their desperate attempts, including trying to borrow money from neighbors, they couldn't secure any financial assistance and ended up in public housing. Living in public housing, they continued their old habits, causing disturbances that have started to concern the community. For instance, they recently had a barbecue on their small balcony, an act that left many locals in disbelief given the limited space and safety concerns. Such thoughtlessness seems typical of them and reflects the disregard they've always shown for others' comfort. Moreover, their financial difficulties appear to have led to frequent loud arguments that disrupt the nightly peace, an auditory testament to their ongoing strife. My sister-in-law's husband has since left, leaving just her and Maria to fend for themselves. Their situation is a stark contrast to the quiet, stable life I now lead with my mother. We're both two-person households, but while my home is a sanctuary, theirs is a source of constant conflict and unease. It's become so disruptive that neighbors are banding together, hoping to evict them to restore some semblance of peace. It's a harsh reminder that no matter where you go, being a nuisance can make you unwelcome. Reflecting on these events, I realize how the phrase, "what goes around comes around," rings true. My goal is to live quietly and peacefully, distanced from the embarrassing turmoil associated with my former family. I believe Kevin watches over us, perhaps with mixed feelings about the chaos his family continues to perpetuate in contrast to the tranquility he loved during his life. As I move forward, my focus is on living a life that causes no trouble to others. I want to honor Kevin's memory not just through words but through actions. He always advocated for a life well lived, surrounded by people who bring joy and understanding. Despite the unfortunate family dynamics he left behind, I'm committed to building a life filled with positivity and peace. The decision to buy this condominium wasn't just about finding a new home. It was about creating a haven where my mother and I could feel safe and secure. The quiet, the order, and the absence of drama allow us to enjoy each other's company and focus on the things that truly matter. It's smaller than our previous house, but every corner of this new space is cherished, every moment of silence savored. I've learned a lot about resilience and moving forward. The memories of Kevin, filled with love and laughter, inspire me every day. They remind me of the importance of living authentically and compassionately, ensuring that his spirit of kindness is carried forward. Living well is perhaps the best tribute I can offer to a man who gave so much and asked for so little in return. In this new chapter, amidst the serenity of our chosen sanctuary, I am determined to live not just for myself, but in a way that would make Kevin proud. I won a trip to the Caribbean in a contest, but my husband Andrew threatened to divorce me if I didn't let him and his mom go instead. He used the trip as leverage to get his way. His mom seemed pleased with his plan. I couldn't let them get away with it. I'm determined to get back at them. My name's Lillian, and I'm 32 years old. I work a regular job and have a son named Andrew. I didn't really date much in college and didn't think much about romance until later. When I turned 30, my parents, worried about me, helped me find someone to marry. Andrew seemed like a good match. He cared a lot about his family, which was important to me too. We got married, and everyone was happy for us. It felt like a dream come true. About 6 months into our marriage, I got a bunch of calls from Andrew. He sounded really tired when I called him back. He told me his dad, Alfred, had collapsed at home and was rushed to the hospital. It was shocking news because Alfred had always been healthy. After Alfred passed away, Andrew became very attentive to his mom, who was now alone. He'd visit her every day, take her out for dinner or shopping, and even took time off work to go on a trip with her. It's not like he ignored me, But whenever there was a conflict in our plans, he'd choose to be with her. He'd say things like, "Sorry, Lillian, Mom needs me," or "We planned this with Mom a while ago." I'd agree, but deep down, I felt frustrated. Why was I always the one having to compromise? Wasn't Andrew's mom being a bit too demanding? No matter why Andrew is so attentive to his mom, it's clear he's really close to her. Apart from this issue, our marriage was fine. I just figured this was normal. My personal escape? Doing crossword puzzles with prizes. They were perfect for when Andrew was busy with his mom. Sometimes, I'd even win gift cards or food. One day, I won a big prize, 2 tickets to the Caribbean. I was so excited, I checked the win multiple times. But before contacting the airline, I had to decide who to take. My first thought was Andrew, but I hesitated. He often traveled with his mom, and I didn't want her to come along if I suggested we go together. After thinking it over, I decided to give the trip to my parents. On my way home, I stopped by my parents' place to share the exciting news. "Mom, guess what? I won tickets to the Caribbean," I exclaimed. Mom's eyes widened with delight. "Wow, that's fantastic. You and Andrew must be thrilled." I hesitated for a moment before replying, "Actually, I want you and Dad to have them." Mom was taken aback. "For us? Are you sure?" she asked, pleasantly surprised. "Absolutely. Andrew travels a lot already. I want you two to enjoy this opportunity," I explained. Mom was beaming with joy, but Dad seemed worried. "Dad looks concerned," I noticed. "Well, I have work, dear. It's a busy time of year for our company, so it's not ideal for me to be away," Dad explained. "That's too bad," I sighed. Then Dad had an idea. "Why not go with Olivia instead? It was your prize originally, right? Go and have some quality time with her," he suggested. Mom eagerly agreed, saying, "That sounds wonderful." Feeling excited and grateful, I applied for leave the next day, which was quickly approved. I then contacted the airline to let them know my parents would be using the tickets. On my way home from work, I stopped by a bookstore and bought a guidebook for the Caribbean trip. It had been ages since Mom and I had traveled together, and I was genuinely thrilled. But when I got home, something unexpected awaited me. "I'm home," I announced as I walked in, surprised to see the lights on. I assumed Andrew was there, but instead of his shoes, I spotted a familiar pair of women's shoes at the entrance. As I wondered, Matilda emerged from the living room. "Lillian, do you know what time it is?" she scolded. "Oh, Matilda, I didn't realize you were here," I replied. "It's not just about me being here. It's late and Andrew will be back soon," she continued. "I'm sorry, I'll make dinner right away," I apologized. But Matilda didn't stop there. She criticized me for not making the bed and questioned if I took my role as a daughter-in-law seriously. Matilda sighed, blaming my working for the situation. According to her, I should prioritize home over work. She had a key to our place and often dropped by unexpectedly since she lived nearby. Matilda held old-fashioned beliefs about a daughter-in-law's role, expecting me to serve Andrew and the family without question. Her constant criticism made it hard for me to warm up to her. As I unpacked and began making dinner, Matilda suddenly exclaimed, "Wait, what's this, Lillian? Are you planning a trip to the Caribbean?" She had found the guidebook I had just bought. "Matilda, why are you going through my stuff?" I asked, annoyed. "That's not the point. Why are you going to the Caribbean?" she demanded. "I won a trip in a contest. I was going to give it to Mom," I explained. "I haven't heard anything about this. Why should I?" Matilda snapped back. Our argument was interrupted by Andrew's arrival. Matilda quickly told him what she found, pointing at me accusingly. "Andrew, listen. Lillian's being thoughtless." "Did she do something wrong?" she asked. Andrew turned to me, his expression stern. "What's going on?" he demanded. "I won the trip and wanted to give it to my parents. But since Dad can't go, you're going with Mom." I replied calmly. "Why did you talk to me about this? It's my prize," Andrew said, looking frustrated. "What's the big deal? You always travel with Matilda," I retorted. "It's not the same. Mom and I only go on trips within the country. We haven't been abroad in years. How could you decide this without talking to me?" Andrew slammed his hand on the table, cutting me off. "You're getting too bold for a daughter-in-law. Mom and I are going. You stay home." "Mommy," I couldn't hide my disdain at Andrew's childish word choice. "Wait a minute. This trip, you've had enough. If you're not happy, Let's talk about divorce. Divorce? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Threatening divorce over something like this seemed absurd to me. Fuming, I shot back. I won this trip fair and square. I've already decided to give it to my own mom. Can't you just pick up on the signals for once? Mom wants to go. When does it end with putting Matilda first? You never think about how I feel. I don't care how you feel. Like I said, this trip is for me and Mommy. Stay home and behave. Andrew insisted coldly. My affection for Andrew was quickly fading. It was clear I ranked lower than Matilda in his eyes. I couldn't keep dealing with their ridiculous dynamic, so I calmly told Andrew, "Fine, do what you want and enjoy your trip." You should have listened in the first place. Do what you want, Andrew replied dismissively, a far cry from the caring Andrew I once knew. Meanwhile, Matilda looked smug and victorious. I decided to leave the house while they were away on their trip. I resolved to let Andrew and Matilda have their vacation this time. The next day, I called the airline to change the names on the tickets to Andrew and his mom. But the operator sounded worried as they told me, "I'm sorry, but once the participants are confirmed, we can't change them." "Is that so?" I asked, feeling disappointed. "Yes. Plus, this ticket requires the actual winner to be one of the travelers. So if it's your husband and mother-in-law, the ticket won't work," the operator explained. "So if I don't go, the ticket is useless," I clarified. "Exactly. Please check the documents we sent you. They mention this condition," they advised. After reviewing the documents, I found out that only the winner could use the ticket, and it couldn't be transferred. I explained this to the operator and decided not to go on the trip without telling Andrew and Matilda. Instead, I made plans to let them travel at their own expense. That evening, when I got back from work, I casually brought up the Caribbean trip to Andrew. "Hey, about the trip?" I started. "Yeah? Did you talk to the airline? Are Mommy and I all set to go?" Andrew asked eagerly. "I did call them. Here are the winning documents and the tickets. I only need the tickets. I won't bother reading the documents," I replied. "But there might be important details in there, especially since it's an international trip," Andrew suggested. "I don't think I need to. Mommy and I have got it covered. We're efficient, unlike you," I retorted. "Fine, whatever. I'll leave them here just in case," Andrew said, sounding annoyed. As I expected, Andrew didn't bother to read the documents. On the day of the trip, after making sure Andrew had left, I packed my bags and went to my parents' house. While unpacking, as I anticipated, I got a call from Andrew. As soon as I picked up, he started shouting. "Hey, what's going on?" "They're saying the ticket can't be used," he exclaimed. "That's right. If the winner doesn't go, the ticket is invalid," I explained calmly. "What? Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Andrew demanded. "I did tell you, remember? I mentioned it might be a good idea to read the instructions," I reminded him. "You mean it was written in those documents you gave me?" Andrew asked, sounding frustrated. "Exactly. It's your fault for not reading." "This is ridiculous. So how are we supposed to get to the Caribbean?" Andrew asked, his tone getting more agitated. "Well, the operator did mention that if the winner doesn't go, you'd have to pay the full price," I replied matter-of-factly. Clearly caught off guard by the situation, Andrew sounded frantic. I could hear Matilda's voice in the background, indicating they were both in distress. "Andrew, what did Lillian say?" Matilda demanded. "Mommy, if Lillian doesn't have to pay for the trip." Andrew started to explain before handing the phone to Matilda. "Let me talk to her. I can't deal with this anymore," she demanded. I decided to let them sort it out themselves and hung up silently. It didn't take long before Andrew called back. "Hello," I answered, expecting more drama. "What is it now?" "I'm busy," I said coldly. "It's not. What is it?" Andrew sounded flustered. "I tried to buy the tickets, but the credit card isn't working," he explained. "Huh? I don't know anything about your card," I replied, puzzled. "It's not mine. It's your card," Andrew clarified. "Oh, so you're saying you used my card without my permission?" I accused. "I just need to fix it now. When I checked my wallet this morning, my card was missing." "I had a hunch and immediately froze it. I knew you stole it," Andrew retorted. "Are you kidding me? I was planning to shop with that card abroad." "Always messing things up, you jerk," I fired back. "You freaking witch." Andrew snapped. He showed no remorse for taking the trip or for using my card without permission. This guy always put himself first. Fed up with his behavior, I coldly told him off. A jerk? Who were you calling that after mocking others all the time? You should just go to hell, I exclaimed. What? Who are you talking to like that? Andrew asked, sounding offended. Who do you think? Calling out for mommy is honestly creepy. If you love mommy so much, why don't you two just stay together? I can't handle you, a mama's boy. There's no value in us being married, I declared. Hey, calm down. If you keep this up, we'll divorce, Andrew threatened. Fine by me. I was thinking the same thing. I've left the house and don't plan to come back. Enjoy your time abroad with your beloved mommy. Hope you both drown in a Caribbean. I shot back before hanging up, feeling both angry and relieved. Furious, I ended the calls and blocked Andrew and his mother. Then, I went to a law firm my dad suggested and started the process of ending my marriage. When I looked at our savings to divide our assets, I saw that our joint account was empty. Andrew had taken out money multiple times, all around the time he went on a trip with his mom. It was clear he used the money for their travels. And he also used my credit card without asking. I demanded a big payment from him. As a result, he ended up owing money and was being chased by creditors. His mom, who used to get whatever she wanted, now had a strained relationship with Andrew, arguing with him every time they saw each other. It's funny how things turned out considering how spoiled he used to be. Meanwhile, I decided to stay with my parents for a while. I've caused them worry, so I want to make it up to them by living with them and taking care of them. Honestly, I'm done with marriage. What's really important is having a loving family. Going through this divorce made me realize that all over again. Look, I'm letting you off the hook this time. Just come back, and I'll pretend I didn't see anything. What is this guy talking about? He doesn't get it. Time to show him some hard truths. My name is Olivia, and I'm 32. I've been married to my husband Mason for a year now. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, started dating, and eventually got married. We're not getting any younger after all. Mason isn't the most exciting guy, but he's calm and steady. I thought we'd be together until we were old. We both work, so we don't have to worry about money. We got married without overthinking it. I do most of the housework since we're both busy with our jobs. Mason never helps. He's either relaxing or leaving early, rarely home. But I never found housework a burden. My parents lived like this too, and I thought this was how a wife's life should be. I have a regular 9-to-5 job and no major hobbies. Mason and I were never very talkative. We respected each other's space, and it was never a problem. Life just went on. One night, Mason came home late, probably from drinking with coworkers or friends, who knows. I welcomed him. Mason, you're home late. Had a long night out, huh? Dinner's still there if you want it. But I guess you're not eating this late, are you? He turned around, said nothing, and walked into the living room, ignoring me. I sighed. Here we go again. Whenever Mason is in a bad mood, he gets very quiet, so I figured something at work or during his night out must have upset him. Best to let him be. I know better than to bother him when he's like this. I felt his presence from the living room but shrugged it off and went to bed. He'd probably be back to his cheerful self by morning. It was the same old story, and I didn't give it a second thought. The next morning, while I was preparing breakfast, Mason came into the kitchen. Good morning, I greeted him cheerfully. Mason glanced at me, grabbed some milk from the fridge, and left without a word. I was a bit surprised by his coldness. It wasn't like him. He still seemed to be in a bad mood. I never thought I'd see the day when he would act like this. We both valued our independence and space. I hadn't tried to talk to Mason directly, so I decided to wait and see. I continued preparing lunch boxes for both Mason and myself. However, things didn't go back to normal that easily. Mason remained distant the following night and the day after. At this point, I was genuinely concerned. Days turned into weeks, and Mason continued to give me the silent treatment. I tried reaching out through WhatsApp and even left him notes, but he ignored it all. However, he'd eat the meals I prepared. I noticed the empty lunchbox in the sink, so I knew he ate the packed lunch. So I put a note in a cooler bag. I thought if he found a note while enjoying a lunch I made with love, he'd have to react. But that was another miss. Mason said nothing. Before I knew it, over a month had passed in a strange silence. I felt helpless. I had tried everything, but nothing worked. Then, one evening, I took a drastic step. I deliberately didn't prepare dinner. Every evening, I made dinner when I got home. But what if I didn't? How would Mason, who's been ignoring me, react? I decided to find out. When Mason came home, I pretended to be watching TV in the living room. Mason came into the living room and looked intently at the table where dinner usually waited. But tonight, the table was empty. After looking at the barren table, Mason turned his gaze to me. Holding my breath, I waited for him to say something, but he walked into the living room in complete silence. I heard the front door open and shut with a bang. I was stunned. Why am I being ignored like this? I had no idea. I was left bewildered, sitting alone on the living room couch. The next morning, I woke up and went to the living room. Mason was already gone. Did he go to work already? Curious, I looked on the living room table and found a note. Reading the words on it, my eyes went wide. "Stop skipping out on your wifely duties," it read, scribbled hastily in messy handwriting. Something inside me snapped. That's it. I'm done. Why do I have to keep pleasing Mason? Is this going to be my life forever? We were never a clingy couple, but this is just unacceptable. There's no reason for him to do this, nor an opportunity for me to even ask about it. For the last month, the stifling silence in the house has been unbearable. I wrote next to Mason's scribble, "I'm going back to my parents' house." I quickly packed up my things and went home. My sudden arrival surprised my parents, but after I explained how Mason had been ignoring me for over a month without any apparent reason, they understood and welcomed me warmly. It felt good to be in an environment where I could have a normal conversation. For now, I decided to stay here and see how Mason reacts before deciding on my next steps. I didn't hear from Mason the day I left. Knowing him, he's probably assuming I'm just trying to make a point and will continue to ignore me. Well, let's see how long this lasts. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no call or message from Mason via WhatsApp or any other means. He didn't even bother to visit my parents' house. Before I knew it, half a year had passed. I had nearly forgotten about Mason altogether. Then one day, as I was leaving my parents' house to go shopping, there he was. Mason, standing with a defiant and angry expression. I was shocked and froze in my tracks. Mason just glared at me, still not saying a word. Is this game still going on? It was almost laughable how silent Mason was. But then, in the next moment, he tried to walk into my parents' house without saying a word. "Whoa, hold on there." I stopped him. Mason looked at me, his face a mix of anger and disbelief, but still silent. I warned, "Don't just walk in. I will call the police." Finally, after more than 6 months, Mason spoke, a snide smile on his lips. "Look at you, acting all high and mighty. Since when do you get like this? Just because you're at your parents' house doesn't mean you can talk to me like that." I remembered Mason being a bit rough around the edges, but not like this. Lost in thought, I was jolted back to reality when Mason suddenly erupted. "What were you thinking? Leaving the house for half a year, having a good time at your parents'? Get a grip." Mason kept ranting, then gestured as if to say, "I can't believe this. Look, I'll cut you some slack this time, okay? Just come home. I'm willing to overlook it this once." Mason spoke so condescendingly. I calmly responded, "I think you're confused. You and I are strangers now, you know." Mason's face went blank, then turned red with rage. He started yelling again. "What are you saying? Have you lost your mind? We're married, aren't we? Stop playing games." His intense outburst silenced me for a moment. He kept yelling, "I'm saying I'll forgive you this time, so stop messing around and pack your bags." At that moment, my own anger boiled over. He talked like he was doing me a favor by forgiving me, as if I'd done something wrong. That infuriated me even more. Moreover, it seemed Mason had no clue what had happened in the last 6 months. Finally, I snapped at Mason, who was still yelling. "I received divorce papers from your mother, signed them, and already filed them with the court. So we're not married anymore. Got it? We're strangers. Total strangers. Understand?" I emphasized the word strangers, and Mason looked at me, his face drained of color. He seemed genuinely shocked. "Here's what happened," I continued. "A month after I moved back to my parents' home, your mother, Helen, called me to a cafe near our house. We had never been close, and I hadn't seen her for a while. After brief pleasantries, she handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, tilting my head. "Open it. Even you will understand," she said. I opened the envelope and pulled out the paper inside. It was a divorce petition, already signed and stamped by you. Confused, I looked at Helen. The eyes of your mother, who was glaring at me, were the same as yours, full of disdain. While putting the divorce petition back into the envelope, I asked her, "So, is this Mason's doing? Did he say anything to you about this?" Helen let out an exaggerated sigh before answering. "Oh yes, he said plenty. Would you like to hear?" I smiled at her and replied, "Yes, please go ahead." She launched into her story. According to her, Mason had been bad-mouthing me for a while now, saying that I was a useless and incompetent wife who stopped doing any housework after we got married, that I quit my job and lazed around at home all day, and that whenever something didn't go my way, I would run back to my parents and act like a spoiled child. Helen's eyes never left mine as she spoke, and it was clear she believed every word of Mason's lies. There was no point in arguing with her, I thought. When she was done talking, Helen finally asked, "So what are you going to do? Not that I want to meddle, but you're being pretty awful, you know." By the time I walked out of that cafe, my mind was made up. I smiled and told her, if he wants a divorce, then that's what he'll get. Helen glared at me one last time, slapped some money on the table for her share, and walked out of the cafe. I went straight to my parents' house, signed the divorce papers, and submitted them to the court the very next day. While I was explaining all of this, Mason's face turned increasingly pale. It seemed he hadn't been informed by Helen at all. But honestly, I didn't care. After all, I had already trusted Helen with the signed divorce papers. Mason must have had the same idea in mind, I figured. Once I finished telling my side, Mason blurted out in a panic, "No, you've got it all wrong. I only filled out those divorce papers to keep my mom off my back. I never intended to submit them. They're invalid." Panicked or just confused, he started making no sense. "Besides, you're the one who will suffer if we divorce. So let's go to the court right now and have them withdrawn." I gave Mason a cold stare, then tilted my head. Why would it be a problem for me if we got divorced? Mason suddenly grinned as if he had won. "Think about your age. At your age with a divorced history, no one will want you. That's why I'm saying I'll take you back. This is for your benefit. You get it? I'm saying we can pretend the divorce never happened and you should be happy," Mason said, his arrogance and delusional thinking palpable. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. "Listen, we're not kids. A divorce doesn't just get erased. And for the record, I'm already married to someone else." Mason's jaw dropped and he went silent. "What? Really? Do you want me to repeat myself? I'm married to someone else." Mason, who had a look of disbelief, suddenly started making a fuss. "That's a lie. You're just trying to look good, aren't you? You're making up stories to get me to go away, aren't you? You're really making a fool out of me. You know that such lies won't work." As I was wondering how to explain to this idiot, a presence came from behind me, and a man appeared at the entrance. The man looked at me and Mason alternately, looking confused. Mason, for his part, was surprised to see a stranger coming out of my parents' home and fell silent. When I looked at the man, he tilted his head and asked, "Is something wrong?" Feeling awkward, I smiled and turned to Mason. "This is my husband, Noah." Noah greeted Mason with a slight, skeptical nod. Mason took a step back and looked up at Noah. It made sense. Noah was a former national rugby player with an imposing physique. Overwhelmed by Noah's appearance, Mason suddenly started to make excuses. No, you've got it all wrong. My old boss told me you've been married for about a year now, and your wife might start to get a little uncomfortable. Better put her in her place," he said. So I did, and guess what? Turns out he got dumped by his wife and kids. What a fool, right? I was just doing what he told me to do. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. You understand, right, Olivia? I looked at Mason with a gaze filled with disgust, fed up with his pathetic excuses. Mason looked puzzled, maybe because my reaction wasn't what he expected. Then Noah spoke up. "Sorry, but could you leave immediately and never come back here? If you approach Olivia again, I'll call the police." As he said this, Noah firmly pushed Mason out of the doorway. Intimidated by Noah's force and determination, Mason fled the scene. For a while, we both remained wary, concerned that Mason might harbor a grudge and do something irrational. But days turned into weeks, and we never heard from him again. One day, curiosity got the best of me, and I reached out to a mutual friend to inquire about Mason. We began by catching up on casual topics, but when I asked about Mason, our friend sighed and filled me in. Surprisingly, Mason quit his job just a few days after showing up at your parents' house. The reason? Turns out Mason was always in agreement with his boss, whom he trusted when the boss harassed subordinates at work. It became a big issue in the company. As a result, the boss was resigned. Resigned being a euphemism, he was basically demoted to some remote mountainous area I'd never heard of. Apparently, Mason was expected to be transferred as well, but he quit out of pride. According to our friend, he's still jobless. He's been looking for work, but his arrogance has hindered his efforts. Even when recruiters offer him opportunities, he declines interviews. Furthermore, news of him quitting reached his mother, who then disowned him due to her own extreme personality. Finally, our friend said he blames everything on his old manager and just drowns his sorrows every day. At this rate, he'll ruin his health before he ever finds another job. It's a mess. I hope he finds a new spouse or something, though that's unlikely. We both chuckled as we hung up the phone. Mason seemed to be drowning his days in job hunting and drinking. Thanks to him, I am now living a peaceful life with Noah. Interestingly, Noah was actually my colleague. Upon hearing about my divorce, he had eagerly pursued me. Though we started dating only 6 months after my divorce, which made me somewhat hesitant, I was quickly drawn to his confident manner and kind personality. After getting married, Noah told me that he had always had a crush on me and he was heartbroken when I got married. I laughed and apologized for not noticing his feelings sooner. Noah helps me around the house, a task I used to handle alone. Whenever we eat together, he always says how delicious the food is with a smile. It's these little things that make me incredibly happy, something I never expected. I was probably numb to it all, having grown up with old-fashioned parents. Now I am living a sparkling married life with Noah, who always delights in even the most ordinary things. I'm convinced that with him, I'll have a happy life all the way through our golden years. And so I am certain.